if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because it's just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, with it a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning, and welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. We're here to talk about a piece of news that dropped. I know we're going to do the X-Men ranking at some point this week. Josie will not be joining in for that, unfortunately. She, She has a personal matter to attend to. It hasn't been a great year for her. And my condolences to her and all that. But and I've told her that in private. I'm not going to make that announcement on a podcast. But we're here to talk about the Doctor Who news that came out. And it appears that Doctor Who will be playing the role going forward of the CW shows, the CW DC shows, in the pop culture news cycle. For those who don't remember, because we talked about it at length on here, but it's been a while, there were a lot of conspiracy theories about the CW shows, about the fact that they don't, they're pushing an agenda. The ratings aren't good. Why are they still getting renewed? They're always in danger of being canceled, and all of that. And it's one of those things where it's like they would compare, like, these outlets, these right-leaning outlets would compare, like, the ratings of CW to the ratings of, say, CBS or something like that. That was the big one with Supergirl, where it's like, look at how the ratings fell off season 1 to season 2, and it's like, yeah, because it went from a basic cable network that everyone gets and everyone watches, to the CW, which not everyone gets and doesn't advertise on every channel. So, like, Supergirl had the lead-in of, even if it wasn't directly behind, a football game, it had the lead-in of they were advertising, hey, look, we have a Supergirl TV show, and they would advertise that during football games. They would advertise it during sporting events and major things that were getting millions and millions of viewers. So it dropping off the way it did was entirely because, hey, we moved from there to the CW. And it's like, okay, well, have fun on the CW then. But therein, was the thing where it's like these shows aren't doing well, and it was a horrible misrepresentation of reality because, number one, anytime you have a show that tends to skew towards younger audiences that airs on television, you can't look at the live numbers, which is what they would cite, the live numbers. You have to look at the L+3, L+7, so live plus 3 days, live plus 7 days, and then there's even a live plus 30 days. And that would give a more accurate representation of how many people are watching. But at the end of the day, with on-demand, not letting you skip commercials, at the end of the day, they don't care how you watch it or when you watch it, just that you watch it. As long as it's a legal way to watch it. Yes, they care if you pirate it, But if you watch it on the CW app, or if you watch it on demand on your cable set-top box, they don't care how you watch it. The new thing that this has kind of hit is Doctor Who, which had a lucrative contract with Disney for the 60th anniversary specials, plus the first 2 seasons of the 15th Doctor, which is the one we just had season 1, and now we're going on to season 2. And I think that there are a lot of contributing factors that go into the ratings on this. I don't think this is specifically a people revolting against an agenda, which is what's being portrayed as. And then also, I don't think it's fair to say that the show was a complete failure. The show did pull about $2 million an episode, which is not horrible. I don't know what Doctor Who was pulling in the UK alone. I don't know what it was pulling on. I think the place that it aired in America was BBC America, so presumably the audience has widened substantially. But I would say there's a few contributing factors here that kind of put it in this weird place. Number one, it very much tried to have its cake and eat it too, where it wanted to be the on-ramp. This show, when it started, was designed to be an on-ramp to get people on board with Doctor Who may have never watched it, may have been lapsed fans, that kind of thing. That's what the show was meant to be from the beginning. And that's why you get the first episode of season 1, you get kind of an info dump, where the Doctor is talking to Ruby, and he's just like, TARDIS stands for time and relative dimension in space. I'm a Time Lord. Time Lords have 2 hearts. I come from the planet Gallifrey. Gallifrey was destroyed during a war with the Daleks. And it's there's a lot that go in, there's a lot of information just dumped in that first episode, because it's okay, everyone who has seen the show will know this already. Everyone who hasn't seen the show, this is going to be the on-ramp for them. Give them all the relevant information and then move on. And okay, cool. That's fine. The issue is you can't do that and then also have the bad guy be Sutek. Someone who I'm oh, that's cool, I guess. I've never seen Pyramids of Mars because, in America we didn't have access to, this. If you weren't alive when it happened, and it was airing on PBS, I believe, in the 70s as part of their, PBS does air a lot of British TV. If you weren't alive then to have seen this, well, you can't watch it because the back catalog of Doctor Who episodes is not there. The other thing is, the episode where this is available is only on BritBox. You can't get it on Disney+. And then on top of that, too, if you saw the 3 specials with David Tennant and Catherine Tate, you can't watch the rest of David Tennant's stuff unless you have Max, because Max is where the rest of, the revival of Doctor Who is. And I think that's the other thing, is that I don't think Disney bet that big on this. They act like Disney, I think it was a $2 million an episode deal in terms of budget increase, which, yes, you can feel it, but also you really can't feel that much of a budget increase because a lot of the effects still look spotty. And for a show like this, where you're going to do this high-concept science fiction, I think that doing that looks bad when you're going to put it on Disney Plus next to Ahsoka, next to The Acolyte, next to Miss Marvel, which also didn't look great but looks better than this. And especially when you're going to do a villain who's as effects heavy at the end as Sutek, it's it's kind of like there's the old adage where it's the limitations of budget. I don't know what the exact quote is, but when you talk about budget limitations, sometimes they're more inspiration than they are than they are a hindrance, where it's because you have the budgetary constraints, you have to think outside the box. And things end up looking better because of the budgetary constraints. That's how you end up with old movies aging very well. It's we didn't have the technology or the budget to make this thing look right the way we would want, but we're going to make it work here. And I think to that end, giving them more money was not the answer, because it's okay, so we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to do X, Y, and Z. We're just going to do it. And if it doesn't look great, it doesn't look great. Then there's the issue of the show gets off to a really slow start. I would say the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road, is not a great episode. It was something that I was like, okay, I remember when I saw it, I was like, all right, I see what they're doing, like, I appreciate, I think I'm gonna like this Doctor and his companions dynamic. And then I remember watching through the season, you get to that first episode with the Space Babies in the second episode, which I don't even remember what the second episode is, and as you go through, you're like, I still don't really like it. It takes until about the episode 73 yards, which is just the Ruby episode. Billy Gibson, kills it in that episode, but it takes until that point to be like, oh, this is where, this is what we have to be. Like, this is where this show is. And then from then on, the show is great, because you get, the second episode was the one with the bomb, or the Roomba that he's standing on. And it's like, by the time you get to that episode, like, Dot Bubble is pretty good. I enjoyed Dot Bubble. You have the episode with Jonathan Groff, like, also really great. Like, that whole dynamic between the two of them, fantastic. And I would argue there are moments that work in the final two episodes. I think the penultimate episode is the best episode of the season, because it feels cohesive and it feels like an on-ramp to, to some of the wider lore of the Doctor Who universe. But it doesn't feel like an episode where it's like we're going to, like the last episode doesn't feel quite right comparatively. And then on top of that too, it's like there's this moment where it's like the end of the show, the end of the season, is dependent on the memory TARDIS, which is a mechanic that hasn't been introduced to audiences outside the UK, because we don't have the web series about that available here. Like, I can't go on Disney Plus and watch that, which is kind of a big hindrance to what's going on here. Yes, they explain what the memory TARDIS is, but that works more for the international audience, or the home audience. We're the international audience on this, and not really for us, which again is a problem when this is the big repitch to American audiences. This is them saying, hey guys, we know you heard about this because 10 years it was fucking everywhere for some reason. Like, 10 years ago with the 50th anniversary, you had Doctor Who all over. Like, it was, there was that period where it was like Tumblr and like, Doctor Who, Sherlock, and Supernatural were a huge thing, and that's kind of like where this was, and a lot of people fell off with the show around the time that Matt Smith left, and they went to Peter Capaldi, and that's the issue, is that they're trying to reclaim this audience, but at the same time, they're not, like, it's clear that that's the audience they're trying to get back, but they're also not appealing to that audience. Like, if you're trying to get that audience back, the move is not to reference things from 20 years, like, from 50 years ago. Like, right now. The move is to reference things we know about. Like, or things that have been done in that period. Like, hey, you remember this? Which is clearly what they're trying to do when they bring back Donna and the 10th Doctor. Like, clearly that's what they're trying to do. It's just kind of a weird thing to be in. Now, in terms of ratings, how does this all shake out? If it really pulled about 2 million an episode, and again, we're just now, I think, outside the range of the L plus 30, which is what Disney will be looking at. And by the way, I haven't seen concrete numbers on this, because again, the way we calculate streaming is A, skewered towards Netflix and the binge model, and B, a really dumb way to do it for the public's consumption of this information, which, granted, I would say we don't need this information. I would say there's nothing to gain from this besides transparency in, like, oh, this show only had X number of viewers, that's why we're canceling it. But saying, like, oh, this many minutes were watched, it's like, well, okay, was there an episode where people kind of stopped watching because this doesn't give me that information? Like, the way to determine the average number of views per episode is just take the number of minutes divided by the total number of minutes of a full season, and ta-da, that's the number of people who watched each episode the entire way through. But granted, it's like that's an imperfect system, because people don't watch the credits of every show, and the credits are about 5 minutes long. I know on The Acolyte, they're like 2 to 5 minutes long, depending on the episode, or 3 to 5. Because sometimes they have more of the international credits than others, and that's the thing where it's like, well, what's the, how do we address this? And look, we don't have the answers, and anyone out there who's telling you they have the answers, outside of, I think the big trades have more information than they give us, but no small publication is going to be like, yes, I know exactly how well it did because I did X, Y, and Z, because the publicly reported statistics are intentionally done in a way to obfuscate the truth, and that is a problem. In an era where streaming now has ads, we should be able to reliably have advertising that reflects, or ratings that reflect how many people watch each episode. Especially when we have publicly traded companies advertising on platforms owned by publicly traded companies, you would think there'd be some anti-fraud thing that steps in, but no, that's not the case. And to that end, I think that, like, to say that we have a concrete, I mean, it doesn't look good that at the upfronts they had it kind of tucked away. It wasn't one of the big, things for Disney. And granted, it's like, look, this is not a Disney thing. This is a Disney, co-production that they are, that they just reap the benefit of distributing. It's a distribution deal more than anything else. It's like, yeah, they're putting in a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, it's a lucrative distribution deal for the BBC to distribute it in America through Disney Plus, because it's getting to a wider audience. And the issue is, too, like, we need more concrete viewership data. That's the big thing. Without that more concrete viewership data, how can we be expected to be able to render an accurate judgment about how good or bad a show is? And to that end, there's one big thing in play here that we don't want to, that we have to address, where people look at this and they're like, oh, this show is a failure. Oh, this show didn't do well, so it should have been canceled. Or, oh, why is it still going on? It should have been canceled. Oh, they should have, gone back to having a white doctor. Oh, they should have done X, Y, and Z. Like, there's going to be a lot of that comes from this story, and it's predictable because there's this grift that comes from this. The problem is, there is, much like the CW had this, there is a huge amount of not reported information, and that is how many people on iPlayer are watching Doctor Who. iPlayer is the BBC's streaming platform that is only in the UK. And I believe you can access it via VPN here, because back when I was in college, that's how I watched Doctor Who. It was the early days of iPlayer. And I remember that, on that platform, they don't, those ratings are not reported. So we don't know how many people are watching Doctor Who off of this, off of this platform. And if that's the case, if there is a large amount of people watching it, then they may lose the Disney syndication deal, or may get less money out of the Disney syndication deal, or not syndication, but distribution deal. But I think that, the show could live on. As long as it's driving people to subscribe to iPlayer, which it appears to. Based on, what we've seen in general, it appears to be, it very much appears to be driving people to iPlayer. It may not be driving people to Disney Plus, but it is. If it's driving people there, then the BBC has no incentive to cancel the show or change anything, as long as people are continuing to watch. So that's the big question that still remains to be seen. And once we get that answer, that will be the thing. And that's the thing is, we're never going to get that answer. In the same way that we never got an answer from the CW about how many people were actually watching on the CW app. After a certain point, I wasn't watching The Flash on, on cable. I was watching it on the CW app, either on the Xbox or on my phone. Like, I was not watching it, through broadcast television. So, like, I knew for a fact, and on top of that too, Nielsen is inherently a flawed system. But I knew for a fact that, my view wasn't being counted in that publicly reported number. So therein lies the big question. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, if it does, over the course of the coming weeks. Well, I would anticipate we don't get an answer now. I would anticipate this is more of a, let's look at this and then retool season 2 to see if we can get more viewers, because it's a 2-year contract. So let's just be like, okay, look, here's where we messed up. Let's talk to people who didn't watch. Let's figure out why they didn't watch. Let's figure out what we can do to get them to watch. And let's try to cater it that way. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe that's not the, maybe it's not good to try to appeal that way. But I feel like that's going to be what ends up happening. And we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode, we're going to do X-Men rankings later this week. We're going to rank all the X-Men movies. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.